Hello and welcome back to the Matchday Roundup. We have match week 13 for you today. We have got Football St George versus Sydney FC, and we have got Hills United versus the Western Sydney Wanderers. We have a very fun interview with Fletcher Ball of Sydney FC, and one thing which I do want to note before we get into the episode is to once again prompt you to vote for the Powered by Football Awards. I will link them in the show notes again. You'll just be able to click on that Google form link. Yeah, I really hope you guys all vote. We currently have a 4-way tie for one of the awards. So if that's not reason enough for you to vote, I don't know what is. Yeah, it's going to be a really fun awards ceremony. We're going to have all the winners announced on the Matchday Roundup 2 weeks from now. On the Match Week 15 episode, we will talk to all of the award winners, and then we will hand out the medals, which we're organising at a later date. Without further ado, let's get into it. In the opening minutes of the St George versus Sydney FC reserve grade game, there was strong pressure from Sydney, but as the half progressed, neither side were able to convert. Towards the end of the first half, Sydney did end up scoring a goal through George Tiong, however the goal was disallowed due to a 2-on-1. So at half-time, the score was 0-0, but as Sydney pressure continued at the beginning of the second half, there was little response from the St George side. St George eased into the half a lot slower than Sydney. Their chances were pretty promising, but they just weren't able to convert. One such chance saw Mitch Albert pounce off a goal kick, but his attempt just hit the post and stayed in play, which meant that the score stayed at 0-0 for the rest of the game, a tie between Football St George and Sydney FC. In the Premier League match, St George provided initial pressure against the Sydney defence, but Sydney stayed strong, they handled it well. While Sydney slowly eased into the game, their chances would break down before being able to convert. While St George would have more chances of their own, neither side were able to convert before the end of the first half. Upon the return of the match, Sydney were the ones who were having the most prominent chances, I guess. They had many sideline chances, but they just weren't able to convert. That is, until the 37th minute, when a sideline from Joshua Ryan met Fletcher Ball well. His shot snuck behind the St George defence to send the Sky Blues 1-0 up just before the end of the match. While St George did press pretty well, to be fair, after conceding, they weren't able to get an equalising goal. And then, full time, Sydney FC beat St George 1-0. I spoke to the goal scorer, Fletcher Ball, after he won the match for Sydney. Here's that clip.
My name's Fletcher Ball. I'm 12 years old and I play for Sydney FC.
Good job on remembering how old you are, for one. I'm very proud of you. So Fletch, what are your initial thoughts on the match?
It was pretty good. The first half of the game, we were pretty scrappy. We were all bundled up and there was lots of 2-on-1s. But the second half was a lot better because we had our positioning pretty good and we were able to pass the ball quite well.
Oh yeah, everyone was passing really well. It was a good game. I was really happy with it as a sort of spectator. And then how does it feel to win the game for your team?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I was trying to hit a corner off the player, but it just so happened the player had moved up, so the ball just went straight through.
You take those, right?
Exactly.
So then, one thing I noticed is that, you had a bunch of sidelines. I don't know, you said, it was meant to be a corner, but, how important do you find set pieces in your play? Because practice made perfect, clearly.
Yeah, set pieces are very good because we practice them quite a lot at training and stuff, and I guess we just know how to execute them well or when we need to make it so we can get certain set pieces done.
And then, Fletch, I don't know how much you listen to my little podcast, but at the end of every interview, I try and get a little prediction from whoever I'm interviewing. Now, I know that there's not long left. You got 1 or 2 games left, right?
2 games.
2 games left. Still, make a prediction for the next 2 games for either yourself or Sydney as a whole. What do you reckon?
I think we might win the next 2 games, probably 2-1.
2-1? Is that for Rezzies or Prems or both?
Hopefully for both.
For both? Alright, perfect. Well, Fletcher, thank you very much.
In the Hills versus Western Sydney Wanderers reserve grade match, Hills applied immediate pressure in the opening minutes but failed to convert. The Wanderers would slowly ease into the game. Neither side were able to finish their chances in the first half. Upon the return of the match, there was a really strong save in the opening minutes from the Western Sydney Wanderers goalkeeper, Jackson Taylor. He's also your favourite host of the Powered by Football podcast. The Wanderers were holding on after strong Hills pressure in the opening minutes. Whilst both teams began to have more chances as the half progressed, neither side were able to convert, and then that's a little draw between Hills United and the Western Sydney Wanderers in the reserve grade. Moving on to the Premier League match now, and whilst both sides had chances in the opening minutes and neither were able to convert, the Hills would have the most chances in the first half. The Hills had the most chances in the first half, but they just weren't able to convert for a while. The Wanderers' main chance, a strong show of passing between the entire team, was just too fast for Ben Keat to finish. The Hills were finally able to convert just before the end of the first half, when a strong show of passing in tandem with a defensive miscommunication from the Wanderers saw Matt Mallows set Chris Turnbull up well, his shot sneaking through the Wanderers' defence. At half-time, the Hills were 1-0 up over the Western Sydney Wanderers, and the Hills were able to double their lead in the 31st minute, when a strong string of passes saw Chris Turnbull set Samir Oshani up well. His positioning helps guide the ball into double the Hills' lead. I'm not exactly sure whether or not it was given to Oshani because the shot was on target by Chris, and I honestly couldn't tell on the video or playing the game whether or not Samir touched it. But yeah, they did double their lead, and whilst the Wanderers would have chances after going 2-0 down, they just weren't able to convert, and the full-time score was 2-0 to the Hills. Moving on to the reserve grade table and statistics. Football St George sit on 23 points after 10 games played. They have a 4-point lead at the top of the table, which would be very difficult for second place Newcastle Jets to usurp. They sit on 19 points. The Western Sydney Wanderers sit in third. They have 12 points. Sydney FC sit in fourth on 9 points. And Hills United sit in last. They have 7 points. Onto the statistics now. And Shannon Anlazar, as I've said many times before this season, leads the goal scoring charts in reserve grade. He's on 5. Ruby McLean and George Tiong sit in second. They both have 4. And a 4-way tie for third between Hills United's Lachlan Nenham, Newcastle Jets' Patrick Nolan, the Western Sydney Wanderers' Jackson Taylor, and Football St George's Jake Vidakovic. Onto the assist chart now, and Shannon Elazar leads that still. He's on 4. Mitchell Albert of Football St George sits on 3 in second, and Patrick Nolan has 2 for the Newcastle Jets. Onto the clean sheets now, and Jackson Taylor of the Western Sydney Wanderers has 5. Logan Balderson of Football St George, Asima Sodhi of Newcastle Jets, and Cody Town of Sydney FC are tied for second. They're all on 3. And a 4-way tie for third between Newcastle Jets' Shannon Anlazar, Football St George's Jamie Larson, Hills United's Matt Mallows, and Football St George's Jake Vidakovic, all on 2. Moving on to the Premier League table and statistics now. As we all know by now, Newcastle Jets have won the competition. They sit on 28 points. After their win, Hills United sit on 16 points in second. Football St George sit in third. They are on 11 points. Sydney FC also sit on 11 points. They're in fourth. And the Western Sydney Wanderers, they sit in 5th place with 8 points. It will be a very difficult position for them not to get 5th now, with 1 game left for them. Onto the statistics now in the Premier League, and Chris Hastis has 10 goals for the Newcastle Jets. A tie for second between Jordan Crane and Chris Turnbull. They both sit on 6. And third place is tied between Shannon Anlazar and Andy Waite, both on 5. Ryan Seck sits on 8 in the assist chart. Mitchell Albert has 6 assists in the Premier League. And a 3-way tie for third between Chris Hastis, Dimitri Leolio-Davis and Steve Webb. Onto the clean sheets chart now. And Dimitri Leolio-Davis has 8. Matt Mallows and Harry Simmons both have 3 in second. And third place is taken by Abdullah Karim of Football St George. You can get involved in Power Chair football here in New South Wales as an athlete, coach, referee or volunteer by visiting the NSW PFA website linked below. Our season takes place in Glenwood at the Valentine Sports Park from the 24th of February 2024 to the 6th of July 2024 every Saturday. Contact info@nswpfa.org.au for more information. Just a quick note that the views of this podcast are mine and mine alone. The opinions and thoughts expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the NSW PFA. If you want to get in touch with the podcast, you can follow us at Powered by Football Pod on Instagram, join our Facebook group, Powered by Football Podcast, or follow our Twitter account, Powered by Pod. Thanks for listening.